if I'm not mistaken, Olga Parshina is already in the Zoom, right? In the meeting, right? You're here, and you have the co-host rights, right? Then I'm happy to continue to move on and to introduce the next speaker. This is our plenary speaker, the first one within the school. I mean, two more will be presented tomorrow. And today's speaker is Olga Parshina, a research member of the Center for Language and Brain, HSC University, with the plenary talk called Experimental Methods in the Field, Mission Impossible. We'll find it out now. Olga, perfect. We can see your slides. You're welcome to start.
Nina, can you hear me fine too?
Yes, we can.
That's perfect. So let me just get my laser point on, like that. Thank you so much, first of all. So yes, my talk will be titled Experimental Methods in the Field, and then Mission Impossible with a question mark. We will see if it gets to the exclamation or not at the end. First of all, a little bit about myself. So postdoctoral researcher at the High School of Economics, soon to be an assistant professor at the University of Delaware in the United States. And my research is mainly based in bilingualism and eye tracking. So I know a lot about bilingual people and eye tracks. And today my talk is mostly intended as an overview of the experimental methods that we can or cannot use in the field. So it is intended for people, for students who are entering the academia and they wanted to know more about experimental methods in general, or it is intended for psycholinguists who are thinking about conducting experiments in the field. And finally, it is intended for field linguists who actually want to know what kind of experimental research methods are there in psychology and linguistics and use it to conduct their own research in the field. All right, so our plan is to answer these questions. Why do we need field experiments? What is a psycholinguistic experiment? What offline research methods can we use? What online research methods can we use? And are neurolinguistic field experiments even possible? So let's first define the term field. So in the traditional sense of this word, we're thinking about going to a small village, small community, tribe, and describe and documenting a less studied or a new language, right? It's grammar, it's lexicon. But in this talk, we will actually be thinking it in a wide sense. So field experiment is everything that is not in the lab, and that is not with the stationary equipment. So we can go to villages, but we also can go to schools, kindergartens, hospitals, community centers, and so on. So we will be actually taking this wide definition of it. So why do we need field experiments? Well, honestly, because psycholinguistic traditional experiments are weird. And by weird, I mean they're Western, they're educated, they are industrialized, they're rich, and they're democratic. So mainly they are conducted in a Western Hemisphere, in an educated population, in big cities, with the population that is wealthy, educated, democratic, and so on. So for instance, in Europe, as far as I know, and definitely in the United States, as I know for sure, the participants are usually undergraduate students because they actually have to take part in some of participants as the part of their credit for the course. So that's what we call subject pool. And we have a lot of participants coming from this population. And of course, it is mostly languages that you all know very well. It's English, Spanish, German, Dutch, Russian is getting there. But what we need, desperately need for the psycholinguistic field, for psychology field, for linguistic field to be fair is to actually test the same notions that are tested in weird psycholinguistics, but with this less studied linguistic, less studied populations in communities and populations with different social economic backgrounds. So what we need to do is actually get out of the lab and go to the field and test the same language universals that we think are working in the weird psycholinguistics, in less studied populations and less studied languages. Now, what do I mean when I say experiments and experimental psycholinguistics? Well, I mean the experiments that use scientific method. So by that, what we're doing is we take a theory, we formulate the hypothesis, we design a study to test the hypothesis in which we identify what we're measuring, and that is called dependent variable. So what we measure, and we can actually manipulate conditions which can affect this dependent measure, and this is called independent variables. We also need to select experimental and control groups to make sure our conditions work. Then we collect data, we analyze data, and then we can either confirm or reject our hypothesis. And we can hope that we can publish the results of the study. So by using scientific method, that's what I mean by experimental psycholinguistics, experiments in psycholinguistics. Research methods by itself can be described in very many ways. One of them is the focus of this talk today by the method itself. We can distinct online methods and offline methods. What this means, I will explain just in a second, but it does not mean online or not online. It's not that. And the other categorization can be by the design. So, we have naturalistic observation when we actually observe behavior in a natural setting, right? We do not manipulate anything, we don't control, we just go and observe. Or case studies when they're in limited sample, several participants, correlational studies when we want to know the relationship between several variables, an experimental one, which I just talked about, right? When we have dependent, independent variable, experimental and control group. And so to say, I would say it's metaphorical today, what we will be talking today about is whether we actually can bring experimental design into naturalistic observation. So we can go in the natural settings and still conduct experiments. But let's go back to this method itself, online and offline. So what that means is, I would like to pay your attention to this line here. So we will go from this upper part of the table to the down by the time sensitivity of the response of our participants to a stimuli. So offline, it's when we actually have no time sensitivity. It means when that we do not collect the time in which participants respond to the stimulus that we present them. On online experiments, online methods, we gain some time sensitivity, and the lower we go on this table, the more time sensitivity we gain. So we actually can access how fast our participants respond to our stimulus, to our condition. On the left side of the table, you see our dependent variables, things we can measure, such as accuracy, whether you're right or wrong, grammatical judgments, whether this sentence is grammatical to your opinion or not, preferences, which interpretation you prefer, reaction times, and we then go to fixation saccades and brain activity and the end of this talk. On the right side of this table, you see the actual methods. I will not describe all of them, but I will try cover most of them. So you have an understanding what kind of methods we can use or we cannot use. So let's go to the upper part of the table, offline methods. So what do I mean by offline? It's that experimental procedure that collect responses offline, that is after processing routines have applied, after we show the stimulus, for instance, to the participant. So again, offline does not mean not on the internet. It means in the time sensitivity that we don't collect response right in the middle of presenting the stimulus, but when it's done. And some of the methods that are available there are questionnaires, act-out procedures, sentence picture verification procedures in comprehension, or picture name and sentence production repetition in production. So let's go on and discuss the first one, for instance, as a questionnaire. And I think I need to say that as a field linguist, and I think we have a lot of attendees here who are field linguists, this should be familiar. So these offline methods overlap a lot with the techniques of elicitation in the field linguistics when you actually go to a community in the village, in the tribe, and try to describe the language, right? So a questionnaire is how to design a good questionnaire. First, in psycholinguistic field, we need to select an interesting and hopefully important linguistic phenomenon, let's say in the area of sentence processing or in the area of the lexicon. Then we should look into, are there any theories that explain already this phenomenon? Are there competing theories? And questionnaire should include factors and characteristics that may affect people's responses. Let's do an illustration. So for instance, we can see how the questionnaire can work with something that is called relative clause attachment ambiguity. And ambiguity means different interpretations possible. So if I ask you to read the sentence to yourself, right? Someone showed the servant of the actress that was on the balcony. Let's do the small exercises. I ask you to actually write down in the chat, who do you think was on the balcony? So someone shot the servant of the actress that was on the balcony. Who was on the balcony? All right, I can see the comment, and 100% right now saying actress was on the balcony. I don't see a single person right now who, okay. So Maria thinks it could be either servant or the actress. Okay, now we're getting there. Nadezhda says it's right. Yes, Nadezhda, Anastasia, servant. All right. So you see already. So most of us here, I think, speak Russian as their native, or at least as one of their languages. And we get different responses. That can be an actress or a servant. And thank you so much. So that's what we call ambiguity, when different preferences can be elicited. And there are two competing theories which can explain what's going on. Let me get the slide. We will talk about one of the theory, the earliest one, that is called garden path theory. And its main principle about relative clauses is late closure principle. So what garden path theory says that, well, universally, as a human being who knows a language, you actually supposed to or should attach late. What does it mean is that you attach the relative clause to the phrase that is nearest. It is late attachment, means it's lower in the syntactic structure. And this theory says that lower attachment, late closure, is a universal principle. So it should apply to all languages existing on planet Earth, maybe on other planets too, I don't know. So again, if we're thinking that it's actress, like someone new, it's a low attachment. But if you're thinking it's a servant, it's a high attachment. By just responses that we saw in the chat, we already see that low late universal principle does not work as well as it's intended to, right? Because some of you think it's high attachment. And that was confirmed by doing cross-linguistic work in many other languages. So low attaching languages are this, high attaching languages, some of them are you see on the screen. So this Russian, we actually tend to say it's a high attaching language, but by the response, you see more work is needed and it's going on, so interesting. But what we don't know much about is about less studied languages, especially languages in populations, in ethnic populations in Russia. So it will be an interesting work to do using a simple questionnaire, right? Who was on the balcony? Answer the question. A different kind of offline task is an act-out task, act-out procedure. So what if we have a population that cannot read? Children, like bilingual speakers who don't know this language, or clinical populations. So instead of reading the sentence, participant can actually act out, enact spoken instructions. In the illustration about the act-out procedure can be seen in another kind of ambiguity. It is prepositional phrase attachment ambiguity. So if you hear, not the read, but if you hear the sentence, put the apple on the napkin in the bowl, there can be an ambiguity while you hear. I cannot stress enough. It's not reading, it's hearing, right? Where does the prepositional phrase on the napkin attach to? Does it attach to the noun phrase apple, or does it attach to the verbal phrase put? So when you hear the sentence, what will you do? Do you think that you have an apple that is on the napkin, or that you need to put an apple on the napkin? And again, there are theories, competing theories. First of all is the garden path theory that assumes that syntax is always first. So what I mean by that is that when you hear a sentence, your parser, how you process the sentence, builds it according to the syntactic structure that you hear right now. So put the apple, let's say the frog, put the frog on the napkin, blah, 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 in the box. You will go step by step and you put this apple, or we'll see a frog, on the napkin first and then somewhere else. There's also a constraint-based theory, which says, no, it doesn't work like that. If you have an other extra linguistic information, a context, you will actually refer to this context, and you will rely on the context too, besides syntax. So this was a really interesting research done about how children and adults parse the sentences like this with ambiguity. So they heard the sentence, put the frog on the napkin in the box. They heard it. And what adults would do, let's think about it for a second. What would you do? Well, by looking at this setting, you would probably take this frog and you put it in the box. Well, because you're an adult and you see that there's some reference, there are two references, there is a frog on napkin and there is a frog that is not napkin, and the instructions clear, put the frog on the napkin in the box. But apparently children do not do this. So children are not sensitive to context. What they would act out is they put this frog on the napkin and then probably this frog into the box, or they take both frog and napkin and go to the box. So this act out performance shows us that children were not sensitive to the context, which kind of confirmed the garden path theory. Finally, a little bit fast about sentence picture matching paradigm. So again, when participants cannot read, what we can do, and we can present them two pictures on the computer screen, and similarly, they will hear a sound file with a sentence, and their task would be to choose the picture when they, that they think is matching the sentence. For instance, in this research, Maria Polinsky asked by the heritage speakers of Russian, and just to confirm, everybody knows who these people are. So heritage speakers are people who are born not in a not a Russian-speaking country, but to a Russian-speaking family, or they immigrated at early age. So let's say it's a child who was born to a Russian-speaking family in the United States. So she speaks Russian up to the age she goes to school, about 6 or 7 years old, and then she switches to another language, which is English, and that becomes her dominant language, and Russian becomes her heritage language. So Maria asked if heritage speakers of Russian can do subject-object extraction in relative clauses as well as monolingual speakers do. They heard the sentence "где кошка, которая собаку догоняет," which is subject extraction, and heritage speakers were fine, right, to point at the picture like this. But when the sentence was about object extraction, где кошка, которую собаку догоняет, then they were not good. They were actually a chance. They could not choose the right picture. So this is another example of offline method. About production, also not staying too long on that. Something like picture name and sentence production repetition, we actually talked already about this in the previous talk about from Victoria, for instance. I cannot go past the RUCLAB, which is Russian Child Language Assessment Battery, that uses a lot of offline procedures like this, like name the picture, name the action. As I said, Victoria already talked about RUCLAB and other clinical tests that use offline methods like that. And I know that tomorrow there will be another talk by Maria Hudikova, who will also talk about RUCLAB and how it is used in bilingual populations in Russia. But anyway, so what are the pros and cons of offline methods? It's pretty clear, right? It is super field appropriate. They're cheap, easy, fast, could be used with various populations. Like Group Club, it can be implemented on a small tablet, taken with you, so not special equipment needed. What are the cons? Well, remember that table. What if you want to know a little bit more? What if you want to know the real-time processing difficulties that can happen while you show the stimuli? So not sensitive enough about what really happens in real time. So that's why we're moving to online methods. We're moving on this time sensitivity line to the low part of the table. And we will now discuss this part here. So studies that use reaction time as their dependent variable. So online methods are interesting because they can give us an answer what is happening, how do participants respond in the middle of processing a word or a sentence. Some tasks that use reaction time as a dependent variable are lexical decision, can be in different modality. For instance, when we want to test the access of lexical representation in our mental lexicon, different paradigms like priming that can test the storage of lexical representations or morphosyntactic units, also different modality. The task that can test syntactic research questions, self-paced reading, and again, sentence picture matching paradigm. So today we will cover a little bit all of them. And first, I would like to show you actually a task that uses priming paradigm within the lexical decision task. So first of all, let's define what is a lexical decision task. It's pretty simple. Lexical decision task is when you see a string of letters on the screen and you need to decide whether what you see is an actual existing word in the language or it's not. And you need to respond with the keyboard button, whether you think it's a word or not, as fast and as accurate as possibly be. Well, priming is a very general property of human cognition. It's when you're presented with one stimulus that can affect how you respond to the second stimulus. So the first one is the prime, and it can affect how you respond to a second one, which is a target stimulus. So let's see, this is a simple demonstration of a lexical decision task with priming paradigm. What I will ask you to do is to actually just look at this demonstration and please pay attention to the stimuli that will be on the screen. And please try to think what is special about the stimuli and what does this paradigm test? What was the research question, okay? I will try to answer as fast and as accurate as I can. So my task will be, I will see two words on the screen in English, and my task is to press A, I think if it's a word, yes, and press L button if it's not a word. All right, let's try that. All right, so some instructions on the screen. Okay. I'm good. I'm still good. All right, and these are my results. So let's just read them out. So something called related words. I responded to them with 477 milliseconds. Something called unrelated words. I responded to this with 748 milliseconds. Nonsense words, 693 milliseconds. So these are my results. Let's just try to remember them. So I want to ask actually the audience, what do you think was special about this stimuli? What did you notice? And there is a hint right now on the screen to you. All right, okay. Well, I see the response from Nina, and it's exactly right. It's semantic relatedness. All right, so let's go further. And if I had more time, this will be questions to you, but I will actually just answer myself right now because we are limited in time. So the theory here is that semantically related words are stored very close in our mental lexicon. So imagine there is a spider web of words in our mental lexicon, and the words that are semantically related in this web are located close to each other, and the words that are not related to each other, they will be on different points of this spider web. So the hypothesis of this will be that when I'm presented with the first stimulus, prime, which is the first, the upper word that I saw, if they are related, I will respond to the second word on the bottom, which is target, faster, because they are close in this spider. So I can access the first one, and I don't need much time to go on the spider web to access the second word. Our dependent variable, the thing that we measure here, is a reaction time. And our independent variables, the stuff that we manipulate, are relatedness of the words. They are related, such as doctor and nurse. You can see why. Unrelated, such as bread and doctor. And non-words, doctors, and the non-word, they are the condition, which we will not discuss right now. So these are my results again. If I did the analysis, just a numerical one, I see that I responded to related words faster than to unrelated words, which if I drag the conclusion is that my hypothesis here is confirmed. And if I wrote a discussion, I would say that our theory is supported by this mini experiment. So this was the demonstration of how we can use a priming paradigm in a lexical decision task to test the storage of the lexical representations in our mental lexicon. Another task that now accesses the syntactic parsing is self-paced reading. I believe there will be other talks definitely that use this paradigm today and tomorrow. So this one is when you read a sentence on the screen and you just press the buttons to go on to the next word. Our dependent variable is still reaction time. And the logic here is that you will show increased reading time when the processing difficulty occurs for the respective word or for the respective region. So for instance, this is a demonstration for the same sentence that we saw before. So logic here is that probably the difficulty here occur here in relative clause attachment, and I will spend more time reading this than other words in the sentence. And finally, I will not describe this again. Sentence picture matching paradigm can also be used as a reaction time study when we not only choose the picture that's correct, so it's accuracy dependent variable, but we also can measure reaction time, how fast you click on the right picture. So what are the disadvantages of reaction studies in the field? Well, equipment and software needed. So now you need at least some computer with high precision time, maybe internet access, microphones, headphones, high quality mouses. But good news, there's some free reaction time measurement software now available where you can program the whole experiment on your laptop or even online. I listed the programs here. They are freely accessible and pretty easy to use. Also, what you need to consider with going with RT studies to the field is your population, well, need to be kind of computer literate. So they need to use if it's a reading study, from how to use the keyboard, right, mouse, microphones, and there still need to be adequate settings. So you cannot conduct, let's say, sentence picture verification paradigm when you hear a sentence when in a kindergarten where there are a lot of kids running around, so you cannot hear anything. So you need to, of course, take this into consideration. Now let's move forward, and now we are getting to down this line with time sensitivity, and we're getting to eye tracking. Now we don't have the reaction time as our dependent variable anymore, but fixations and saccades. typically we distinguish two types of eye tracking studies, which is a visual world paradigm and eye tracking and reading. And why do we want to conduct eye tracking study in the field, for instance? It's because of this global eye-mind hypothesis, which assumes that we look at the thing about which we are thinking about right now. So if you look at the picture right now, it's eye-mind hypothesis assumes that it's because you are processing something, you are parsing, let's say, the sentence. So again, our dependent variables, the stuff that we measure now, are eye fixations and saccades. And this in eye fixation can be duration of fixation, count, how many, and position. So let's do a small explanation of what is visual world paradigm. Well, actually, it's kind of very similar to the sentence picture verification paradigm, but now you can have multiple pictures, and we now track the eyes of a participant. And in this one, it's an example from a research with, again, heritage speakers of Russian. And the question is, can they predict, can they use gender markers on the adjective to predict the upcoming noun in a sentence? And imagine you are sitting and you are viewing these pictures and you hear the sentence, which is on your screen. So it is their, let's say, gold rocket is flying in the sky. You can read it in Russian. And there is a marker on the adjective that actually tells you that the next noun should be, because of the agreement, a feminine noun, right? So what will happen here, imagine you hear that. So with your fixation, imagine my laser point is your fixation. When you hear the adjective, and especially this, what is supposed to happen is that you have to look at this, right? Because this is the only possible target noun in this picture. Everything else is not a correct answer. So if you look at the rocket, even before you hear the noun rocket in audio, it means you can use this gender marker to predict the gender of the upcoming noun. And the question here is, are there more fixations of the target region before the participant hears the target noun? So this is how we can use the visual world paradigm to answer this research question. Another type of eye tracking paradigm is reading. So when the participant can actually read the sentence, the procedure here is pretty simple. You see a sentence on the screen, you read the sentence to yourself in a pace that is comfortable to you, and we record your eyes, how you move in the sentence. So imagine we have the same kind of question, let's say same heritage speakers of Russian, but now with the reading. So actually now on the screen, you see the actual trial from the actual experiments, one of our experiments in the lab. And so what we wanted to know is, are there more fixations on the adjective and in the noun, or are there more saccades, so the movements of the eyes to go and read stuff in ungrammatical condition, when our adjective does not match our noun in agreement? Here you see the gloss and the English translation of it. So I encourage you to look at this video of a trial. You will see a pink dot here, which will move the sentence. So it's a monolingual speaker, adult native Russian speaker, who read the sentence. Please pay attention on this region, okay? Let's see. Well, I think it was pretty clear, right? You could see that participants fixates on these words a lot, more than the other, and she actually returns and rereads the words multiple times. So this is a monolingual speaker reading the sentence. And now I encourage you to look at a heritage speaker reading the same sentence. That's it. So as you can see, first of all, the reading is slower. The fixation durations are longer. But what we hopefully noticed is that there are no more returning to read this region, and there are no more fixation counts on this region than on any other words. So, and we actually confirmed the hypothesis statistically. Heritage speakers do not notice disagreement in gender. So this is how we can use eye tracking in reading paradigm to test the hypothesis like this. Well, your thoughts should be, well, it's all good and nice, but look at this setting, right? So this is a pretty heavy and complicated setting to take with you. It should be a display PC, a host PC. There's a huge computer down there. There's a camera, chin rest, microphone, and all that stuff. Well, I have good news for you. Modern eye trackers, I actually produce the data with the same quality. They can take pictures on the screen up to 1 millisecond. Can you imagine frequency 1 millisecond? And they are highly portable. You can feed the whole modern eye tracker into a backpack like this. Programs very easy for data preview and analysis. So we actually took a portable eye tracker to the expedition to a dig region very recently. And we conducted a research in a school in Mykop. And I believe, yes, Nina will present a talk about this expedition today, very soon. But anyways, what are the cons? Well, they are expensive, they're still fragile, and they are, even if it's a backpack, they're pretty heavy. So they require particular settings again. There should be too much light, should be a silence, a good headphones. The head movement should be restricted. Of course, you have to have electricity. I still have good news for you, even if you don't have a budget or you don't have these eye trackers. Oh, and these are actually super modern eye trackers that can now fit in your purse. These are actually glasses. They are good for the visual world paradigm. Not very good for reading, probably, not qualitative enough for reading, but they present you with the ability to move and talk around. So, but if you don't have the eye tracker like that, what we can use is so-called poor men's eye tracker. We started adding this WO here, so poor woman's eye tracker too, which is still good for the visual world paradigm. So there are different types of it. What you can do is you can just use your laptop with a camera and present pictures on it, and then manually code where your participant look. Is it the left corner, right corner, low bottom left, low bottom right? You can also do this box, and this can be actually assembled right in the field, where you have this box, you place the objects, and the camera is hidden right here in the middle. So then you again have to code manually after you present, where does your participant look, which corner. You can also present pictures just on the whiteboard, on the white wall, with the camera in the middle. So this is cheap, potentially possible to set up right in the field. You have to do manual coding after this, unlike in the eye trackers that I just presented to you. They were all automatic. Well, low resolution, so not good enough for reading, and there are added analysis. So you need to, for instance, to align audio file with the looks later. And now finally, I will not cover this too much, but down this line, in the time sensitivity of participant response to a stimulus, we have methods like ERPs, fMRI, MEG, and now our dependent variable, not fixations, not reaction time, not accuracy, but actually brain activity. And your first response, first intuitive response should be no way, right? Okay, I understand reaction time studies. It's okay to take eye tracker, but how can I take something like something that measures brain activity to the field? Well, not this yet, because as you can see, the setting is pretty complicated. So probably will be pretty difficult to take this one, but ERP, yes. These settings are now can be portable, and I will show you how it looks in a second. First of all, what ERPs are? Well, they are just special case of EEG recording. So where we can place the cap with electrodes on the scalp, and these electrodes pick up signals from your scalp from the group of neurons that fire together as a response to a stimulus. For instance, this is an actual picture of some results from a study. If you are presented with a stimuli like this, the cats won't eat, or the cats won't bake. This is the second red line is semantically an acceptable sentence. So you can see that the electric response is to the grammatically correct sentence is on the blue line. But when you hear the sentence or the cats won't bake, your response will be like this, as this wave, which occurs about 400 milliseconds from the onset of the stimuli, shows you the discrepancy between these lines, meaning our brain in the real time picks up that something is going wrong, that the sentence is not correct. Same type with syntactic incorrect sentences, syntactically implausible and unacceptable sentences. So if you have sentence like the cats won't eat, this is the response of the wave. But then let's see if you hear the sentence the cats won't eat, which is in English grammatically incorrect, your wave will go like this, around 600 milliseconds from the onset of the stimulus, positive response. So again, this difference here, right? The big difference shows that our brain in real time, in the super real time, picks up the response, and there is some kind of syntactic reanalysis happening in the real time. Well, again, you would think, okay, this is, I'm not even showing this picture, the whole setting, but it's in a lab, it's pretty complicated. You have to be in a soundproof room. You have a lot of PCs, the host PC, the display PC, the connectors of the signal, again, the caps like this. But again, good news, there are emerging montable portable EEGs that are already used in the field. They are wireless, so you have freedom to move. They are very compact. All you need is basically 2 tablets or even 2 smartphones and the EEG cap, which is wireless, and you just put it, you can move your head, you can walk around. Now, the quality of this data is still discussed, and especially in the psycholinguistic field, whether we can use it or not, but there are articles that are coming out that have a discussion upon that. You are welcome to research and read it. But my general sense that they will be emerging and they will be high and high quality, so it's definitely a possibility. So as the final slide of this talk, I would like to recommend you this website developed by Dr. Sonia Eisenbeis and their colleagues. It has great resources for psycholinguists who want to go in the field and conduct research experimental stuff, or for field linguists who want to know what the experimental research methods are. They have a blog there. They have different links where you can download software, guidelines, statistic software. There are reading materials, there are teaching materials, and importantly, there are stimulus materials with the stimulus that are already ready to use and to download. And so to answer my first question, experiment methods in the field, if Mission Impossible, definitely yes, Mission Impossible. And my colleagues and I in the lab, Center for Language and Brain, definitely did a lot of research with offline and online methods, going out of the lab, not being scared, taking our portable eye trackers, our tablets, and do the research that is less weird. And I hope that you enjoy the lecture. And again, as Olga said in her lecture, please don't hesitate to write us with ideas about the language maybe in your region, the research question that you have that we can test with experimental methods. Our lab will be more than happy and honored to collaborate. Thank you so much.
Thank you a lot, Olga. Well, first of all, it was perfect timing. And of course, the wonderful presentation as always. And I'm also happy to announce that we have already several questions in the chat. Let me have a look at them. Let me read them, right? So the first question was from, let me scroll, from Alexei. I have a little question about tools for the researchers, namely for research automatization of research and the preparation for the big data using. Is there a list from the presenters today that with such services and software that can provide by email to the participants of the school? I maybe even well, should reply this question already.
Go ahead.
Right? Because I think it's more than an organizational question. Like say, as I've mentioned, the materials of the school and the school recordings, they will be provided after we receive speakers' agreement on that, right? So if Olga will be happy to share her slides, and because she already had in those slides a lot of links, right, a lot of software examples, then, right, we will send it out, of course. In case it is not possible, Olga, then could you comment on that then?
What I was thinking about that, first of all, yes, you are completely right. So we collect the data about participants, and we created the list that of participants that can participate in our future experiments. So I would say every lab has a kind of a data storage of participants. I'm not sure that I can answer the question about the big data using, so how ethical would, if I understood the question right, how ethical it would be to just use this email list and let's say collect the data from them. Anyways, if you need participants from a special population, I would recommend to contact researchers from the lab and school, and they definitely, if it's, will provide you with emails of the participants that can be reached, and you can ask them a question if they want to participate in your experiment.
Also, let me clarify a little bit. I think what Alexei meant is that he meant emails of the school participant, like whether he is a participant of the school can, for example, receive your presentation, your materials with those links and those like useful tools, etc.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, right, Alexei, and I think I've answered your question too, that I mean, Olga will be happy to provide her slides, absolutely. Right? We will share it out. Great, we have some more comments and questions in the chat. Let me have a look at them. So Natalia mentioned, thanks for the great lecture. The notion about weirdness reminded me Lera Broditsky TED talk on how language shapes our thought, in which she laments that all we know about language and brain is based on data received from American English-speaking undergrads, and that excludes almost all humans. So
that is, Natalia, thank you. Yes, that is that is so correct. Yes. So how American English, how American universities work. I worked in two of them now. So is that if you are in a psychology or in the linguistics department, to actually to be able to finish the course, you have to go and participate in the experiments from the professor in your department. Unless you do so, you are not allowed to finish the course. It's a requirement. And that's what we call a subject pool. And that's how all the psycholinguistic experiments, most of them, not all of course, that test adults, for instance, have undergrad American students as their participants. And you're so right that it's so unfair and I would say unethical to the field of linguistics and psychology, psycholinguists, because if we talk about language universals, we cannot base our conclusions from American undergrads. We need to go in the field, not only in the American field, but a field around the world and do the same stuff with different populations. Yes.
Right. I think it's also a nice idea to introduce the universities across like Russia's regions, right? So there is one professor at university who creates an experiment and then his or her students take part in it obligatory. Then we would also have data from different languages of Russia. All right. Then there are also some more comments and like thanks. So thank you for your wonderful presentation, informative talk. So thank you a lot, Olga. There is also one request. Please share once again your contact information for possible future questions or collaboration. So Olga, if you do not mind, just type it in the chat later, right? After we finish with the discussion. And one more, a technical question from Maria Usachova. How did you control that the pairs of words in the experiment with pairs of related, unrelated, or nonsense words were actually read, that the buttons were not touched accidentally? Thank you very much for a wonderful talk.
Thank you, Maria. Well, it's a very good question, actually. So how typically we do that is, first of all, in this was a demo, of course, right? It was a very short one, but I would not be able to press a button until in the first couple 100 milliseconds, because if I just pressed it in the, like, I don't know, 100 milliseconds, of course, I know as a researcher that it's not possible that I read this that fast. So as a researcher, we typically know the reading time in milliseconds when we know that participants read this. And there are also programmable controls. For instance, you cannot press the actual buttons until, let's say, 300 milliseconds from the onset of the stimulus. And then as a statistical analysis, as a descriptive statistics, we'll look at the data. And if we see there is data from a participant that pressed the button very early or too late, what we call outliers, right? We will probably not include this data into our analysis.
All right. Right, thank you, Olga, a lot. Maria is actually one of our speakers and presenters as well, and I have also made her a co-host. Maria, if you would like to collaborate on that, or whether the question was answered or not, you're able to do so. Like technically, we have now also an option to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much.
Right. So the question was answered, right? All right. So far, no more questions in the chat. I think from YouTube either.
I see the comment from Alexei about the collecting data. I just want to actually also comment, for instance, if you program the experiment online on the software tools that I posted, I will provide the links to it, such as, for instance, PsychoPy, and you need a lot of data. Participants from all over the world can actually go and participate in your study. There's also a tool that I didn't cover. It's called Amazon Turk. If you ever heard about it, is when you program your experiment online on Amazon, one of the Amazon sites, but you pay to participant small amount of something like money, and you can collect thousands of responses like in one day using this Amazon Turk software. If it's reaction time study, for instance. I hope this is just like, added to your question, just add a comment.
All right. Yeah, thank you a lot. Any more questions? Please, we have indeed some time to discuss. I think Olga has given us a lot of. All right, so there is one comment in the chat from Veronika Prigorkina that there is also a Russian alternative how to collect data. It is Yandex Toloka. Right. Well, I'm wondering, maybe like some colleagues have already used that. I have not personally. I see some of you nodding. Anastasia has experience, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do not have experience with Yandex Toloka, but if it's a Russian alternative, it's just great to use, of course. Yeah, and our colleagues have an experience with that.
Right, Anastasia, maybe you can comment a little bit on this Yandex Toloka for those for whom this tool is not that like obvious and familiar.
Right. As far as I know, you cannot implement your own experiment inside Yandex Toloka, but you can post a link to your experiment. And based on our experience, we have collected about like 500 people in 2 days. So it is quite a lot in a short period of time. So yeah, I definitely would recommend considering this as an option. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
I just want to add as a comment, as a experimental researcher, is that these tools are great for mass data collection and the easy implementation of your experiment. But there are a lot of cons too when you collect, let's say, thousands of people in 3 days. Especially if you pay participant for that, it's not on a voluntary basis. You need to be very careful about what data you collected. If, let's say, they just want some money and they didn't respond accurately, didn't pay attention, what kind of populations you use, right? And if we're talking about field experiments with the population, like in ethnic communities of Russia, well, it's probably also to think about whether it's possible then to use that tool there.
All right, I think that's a good point. I think that's exactly where we need a collaboration, right? From those experts in the experimental linguistic and then experts of the field linguistics who knows the language, who knows the community, who knows the tradition and culture specific phenomenon, right? Great. All right. Are there any more questions? We still have some time.
I would like just to add to Olga's comment that when we collect data online with these massive collection tools, we might end up with very funny and screwed population like we've got with Anastasia Lopukina in our famous basket experiment, when out of 2,000 participants, we had a couple of males, right?
Yes, I think we have about 2,000 people and 8 male participants.
Well, I think again, it's very potential for a new study with the gender distribution while participating in psycholinguistic experiments. All right, then I would like, if no questions left, I would like to thank Olga once again. Thank you a lot for this great introductory, but still even like also like thorough and informative talk.